It's the Craggy Rugby podcast. It's the midweek edition prior to the first game of the new season, where Connacht travel to Cardiff. On the Zoom call tonight, I've got William Davies.
Good evening, Alan.
And Niall Shiel.
Good evening, Alan.
Okay, before we talk to the lads, let's have a few snippets of both press conferences today. We've got Cardiff coach Dai Young, and we also have the Connacht club captain Jarrad Butler, followed by Andy Friend.
Yeah, Cardiff Friday night. What are you expecting from them? They've relayed their pitch, so it might be a little bit different, even again, to what it usually is. You had two humdingers against them last year. It finished one each, so you'll only play them once this season.
Yeah, I think we haven't had a huge amount of success over there, but those games have always been really tight, and I think that's pretty much how most teams fare against Cardiff. It's always a really close game. It's always one try, two try affair to score different. So I think, like you said, we spoke about fast. I think they're a very fast team as well. So it's not going to be uncomfortable for them, especially like you said with the pitch that they've got. It's newly laid, so I'm thinking maybe it might be even better again for them. So it's going to be a huge challenge. But I think if we are able to go over there and put the work that we've been training for the last 10 weeks into action, I think it'll be a really good game regardless, and I think we'll be able to win.
The next 5 weeks are the key to the first part of the season. I suppose it'll be a 15-week cycle at that stage, but it seems as if every team, you won't want to be chasing in terms of where you are wins and losses after 5 rounds, and that applies to every side. If you look at the way the rest of the season stretches out, you need a fast start here.
Yeah, agree. No, you do, and we've been guilty in the last few years of maybe not getting the start that we've wanted. So we're very aware of that. We've got Cardiff away, as we know, on Friday night. That's going to be a really tough game for us. They're a formidable outfit. They're very, very hard to knock over there. I think we've had 2 successes in the last 10 years, so it's not an easy game. So we are aware of that, but our intention is to start well, and hopefully if we're at our best, it would be a really impressive win for us.
We've had success over at the Aviva against Ulster, and that's without fans. So I think there's an excitement to be able to go back there and be able to play, hopefully, in front of a lot more Connacht fans than what you'd probably be able to fit in the sports grounds. The facility there is it's one of the best in the country, and I think everyone that I've spoken to is really excited to get the opportunity to play a game over there. Like I said, we've had success over there before. It's disappointing not to be at the sports ground, but the opportunities, the positives definitely outweigh the negatives.
I thought straight away, I'd love to give our players a platform to play in front of hopefully 20, 30,000 people would be brilliant. So that was the first thing that sprung into my mind. And I actually think interpro games, as I've now learned, they are massive here. And I think, given we've had 18 months with no crowd, I think we could get a big crowd there. We've got a lot of supporters, a lot of Connacht supporters up in Leinster. Great opportunity for them just to head down the road now and get a ticket at the Aviva. I would imagine most, if they know that we're playing Ulster at the sports ground, they're going to say, well, there's only 8,500 tickets there. We're probably not a chance of getting in, so we'll stay at home and watch it. So I think one of the smart things that Connacht did, though, they did go and talk to the Connacht clan and say, listen, here's what we're thinking. What do you guys reckon? So it wasn't without consultation with our main supporter group. And the feedback that came back was, yeah, we'd be happy to head to Aviva. So it's done in consultation with our key supporter group, done in consultation with myself as the coach and therefore the team. And all thumbs were up for it. So I see it as a brilliant opportunity to head up to the Aviva. Last time we played Ulster up at the Aviva, we had a good win. So that doesn't frighten us. And I just think it's a great opportunity to play on a big stage and give the boys the chance to play in front of a lot of people.
And of course, if you want to hear the full press conference, audio press conference from today, you can go to patreon.com/craggyrugby. Okay, William, you were there asking questions. Sounded fairly positive about the new season.
Yeah, I think the big story is that the Ulster Games move into the Aviva on October the 23rd. That came up right at the end of the press conference. It's an interesting decision. I think I don't know whether it's a good development or a bad development. I mean, it's all right saying they beat Ulster up there last year in August when there was nobody there. They didn't beat Munster the following week. But I think it's October the 23rd is the day after the government restrictions in the Republic of Ireland end. We hope. That's the target date. So this has been looked upon maybe as some sort of a celebration match where, in theory, they can fill the whole of the Aviva Stadium on that date. And the plan is, I suppose, to see how many people will be interested in going. Facilitates Connacht fans who are not based in Galway. Does mean that Connacht fans from Connacht are going to have to get to Dublin. It's easy enough here in Galway. You jump on the motorway, you're there in 2 hours, allowing for the traffic. But different if you're coming from Mayo and Sligo, and if you have had other plans for that weekend. I will point out it's the bank holiday weekend, which means that if you're planning to stay up, accommodation and stuff could be difficult to find and a bit pricey. But it's just something different, and it's announcing it today, right on top of the start of the new season. It's a story, and we'll see how that works out. The rest of the press conference was interesting. Jarrad Butler situation. Interested to see what Niall thinks of this as well. He's club captain. He explained it. Andy Friend explained it. Good bit of positivity around, but a realization they need a fast start, and they are trying to change the way they play. Di Young talks about a bit with that with Cardiff as well, that he's demanding more from them in terms of the way they play. So it could be an interesting night on Friday. I'll fair play to Di Young. He says this game won't finish 3 each.
It certainly won't. And Niall, before we start talking about Cardiff, we'll talk about Cardiff near the end of the podcast. I want to go back. I want to just circle back to this Aviva thing. Is this a possibility that maybe there's, if Connacht had to move out of, for a European game, if they had to move out of the sports ground for whatever reason, that they'd be looking at the Aviva rather than Thomond Park? Do you see that as a possibility now that we're looking at playing a game up there, regular season game up there?
Yeah, possibly. This got me straight out of left field, I tell you. I didn't see this coming at all. I don't know what to say. I'm kind of shocked by it. It'll be nice. I mean, I think it's well worth trying, isn't it? And while I wouldn't like to do it for a Munster or Leinster home game, I think maybe the Ulster game is the game to do it for. It's probably the best one to do it for, as opposed to a game against one of the other teams in the competition. Listen, I'm enthused by it, but and it'd be nice. It will be very nice to watch Connacht up there.
It certainly will.
I think the other thing is it's just possible.
Yeah.
At the IRFU are having a look and going, a bit like they do in Wales Judgment Day. But then, Leinster have 35,000 people going to the Bulls game tomorrow night. Or it's not tomorrow night, it's Saturday night. What am I talking about? I'm getting ahead of myself. But maybe they're looking at that. But what's the harm in having, two provinces that have not played a competitive game there in front of a crowd? They have played each other. It's a national stadium. The IRFU own it. So let's see what happens.
There's a whole whack of Connacht fans, as you say, who live in the East. We know from our podcast listenership that, a good 30-40% of the listeners actually are in and around the Dublin area, because lots of people work up there. It's the capital. It's where the majority of people live in the country. A huge majority of people live, within a sort of 30-40 mile radius of the city. So it's maybe not such a bad idea after all.
Proof will be in the pudding, won't it? When you turn up.
That's true. And I mean, even your average rugby fan up there will, I'd say a lot of them would go to the game as well, listen, my opinion is worth giving it a go, and we'll see from there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, back to the rugby and the something that came up today, something we were aware of, and I meant to bring it up at the pre-season or at the season preview podcast, but I forgot. Jarrad Butler, club captain, which I think is a good thing, but he's also still non-Irish qualified, which makes it kind of awkward because we've got a few non-Irish qualified players in the squad now, and I'm assuming we're still looking for a short-term replacement or a short-term cover for Dennis Buckley, who's going to be out for quite a while. That, making an NIQ player could be quite difficult. What are your thoughts, Packy?
I'm shocked that he's not. I know he hasn't played or whatever. I'm shocked that he's not eligible to play for Ireland now, as it is, because he, he's here so long, and I thought he came in before that the 3-year went to 5-year thing, and I'm sure that was said in press releases enough times. Sure, listen, if as the saying goes, it is what it is. If he's not, and they said the end of this season, so I'm assuming that means himself and Ben O'Donnell and
John
Porch are the three then, because as I understand it, you're
Leave Fafita.
As I understand it, they qualify. Somebody from the Pacific Islands qualifies as a Colpack or as a coach.
Okay.
That's my understanding of that. I went looking for it there before, and I think that's the case. I think that's why there's so many of them players from Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa all over France, basically playing, and in the UK as well, I believe. That's one of the main reasons. So, but the club captain thing, I thought was kind of unusual or whatever, but. I can see the logic behind it as well. He's not going to play every game. In fact, when he does play a sustained series of games, he has had a tendency to get injured as well. So, and I think that's the case for an awful lot of players. So maybe it's a good thing.
And something one of our patrons brought up as he chatted to us on patreon.com/CraggieRugby was Tim Shine, who mentioned the fact that we sort of glossed over some of the new laws during our season preview. And one law we completely forgot about was the 50-22, which, of course, is really designed for someone as clever a kicker as Jack Carty, I would have thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. Jack, he's brilliant coming back against the grain from the middle of the, from let's say a scrum or something on the middle of the pitch, and he'll bounce that ball into the 22, no problem. Surprised I didn't see it the last day, but maybe he's keeping it in the back pocket. You wouldn't know. Is
this something, William? Are you a fan of this rule?
Yeah, I'm more a fan of this one. Willis Halaholo on the Cardiff press conferences, they answered my question. I was just chatting to him, and he said he thinks it might create a bit more space. The idea, I suppose, is if you can't just come up with a defensive line if you know that you've got an opposition kicker who can. They've got to be a good kicker, but Jack Carty can do this. We've seen some of his touch finders where he bounces it into touch in the 22. Obviously, he doesn't, under the old law, have the throw-in. But if you've got a creaking line out in the opposition, it's an attacking opportunity. He's good at it. Some out halves aren't, but you have to be able to spiral kick to get it to really work. But it does mean, in theory, that they're going to have to keep maybe more people back, which creates space in the middle. I think it's an interesting one. Obviously, it has to be kicked from within your own half and bounced in the opposition's 22. That's the plan, and it's an experimental one.
I think Conor Fitz is pretty decent at it as well, but it'll be fascinating to see how Connacht adapt to this with their new systems that they have. Adaptability. Hey, there's another one to adapt to. Okay, and talking about adapting, there's a Connacht player playing for Ireland who seems to adapt it to the international game at an unbelievable rate in Beibhinn Parson. Scores again at the weekend as Ireland managed to get a great win against Italy in the World Cup qualifiers. But the run that she made, what she called a clearance kick just outside the 22, and I think she bet something like 12 Italian players before it took 3 of them to drag her to the ground. And then Ireland went and scored a try from the subsequent replay. But it was great to see a Connacht player. We talked about it in the the season preview about, is there an element of our Connacht starting to be disrespected as well as the women's game? And then you get something like that. Like from the very first moment I saw her in an interpro at the age of 14 playing for the under 18s, or 15 playing for the under 18s, and she stood up 2 players with, the first touch of the ball, I went, oh my God, look at that. And then she did it 3 or 4 times. Her first international appearance was against Canada, and she came off the bench and almost scored a try with her first touch. Took 3 players to hold her up over the line. Her first appearance for Connacht in an interpro was a semi-final a few years back, and she scored a hat-trick. This player is astonishing, and we need to see more of her.
Yeah, we certainly do. Ireland beat Italy, but they should have had a few more points on the board, and that's what's probably going to be an issue for them on Saturday. But look, she's the star player. There's no question about it. They seem unable to get her into the game, and I think far be it from me, but I think she needs to be coached a bit to come and look for the ball, because once she has the ball in hand, anything's possible, and the opposition know that, and they look absolutely scarified when she starts running at them. So if you're going to leave her out on the wing, you've either got to get her the ball more often or get her into play. The break was phenomenal. Italy couldn't kick the ball all day. It's what cost them the game. But that's how you punish it, by taking off, splitting a defence apart and leaving them gobsmacked. And hopefully on Saturday against Scotland at 5 p.m, where they will know exactly what they have to do, there's more to come. Because some of the attack lines, and look, I'm not a coach, but you're watching Ireland attack it, and they're so flat to the line that she's getting the ball and she's standing still. She's no choice. And they're out there, they're on a camp, they must be practicing every day. Just concentrate on passing the ball across the line accurately with a bit of speed and set her free. And she can stand them up, she can run round them, through them, and you can see the panic in their faces because there's 2 and 3 people going for her. And then there's an offload available. It's very simple. It's easy for me sitting here in my chair, but yes, superstar. And I'm tempted to think that her rugby career will develop further if she comes out of Ireland and goes into a setup in the UK and France. Her choice, nothing to do with me. But I think the sky's the limit, because when you've got that speed and the skill, and you get coached, yeah, anything is possible. And the Irish women's team at the moment needs a little bit. It's lacking a little bit of something. We saw that dramatically against Spain, but now there's a very simple plan there if they can execute it on Saturday. And I think Scotland will be no different. If she gets the ball in the right place, she will score.
I agree. What are your thoughts, Niall? Like for me, she's almost a female Brian O'Driscoll, and that what she's done for the women's game is what O'Driscoll did back in 2000 and lit a spark.
I don't think Brian O'Driscoll is as good as her, relatively speaking. Honestly, I genuinely mean it. She's an absolute phenomenon. And kind of what William is saying there, I hope there doesn't become this idea of, shoveling the ball out to her and hoping she'll do something. Like they need to get her on the ball. They need to use her in different parts of the pitch, and for the first while, you can see every now and again, Stacey Flood, she's got a great passing game, and she can put her into space. But they need to hold a few of the inside defence before they give it to her. But she's phenomenal. Like her feet are as quick as anything I've ever seen. For change in direction, and it's just amazing to watch. But like William's saying there, I'm not even sure. I think the IRFU should spend the money on keeping her here, because people will go to watch her play. They mightn't go to watch every player play, male or female, but you'd go to a game if you knew she was playing in Galway now. You'd head into the game, you go watch it. So, and I think that's how you make it successful. You have to keep your superstars, and she has the possibility or the potential to be a world superstar, and they have to harvest that.
They certainly do. Well, best of luck to the women, as William said, playing Scotland in that final round robin game for the World Cup pre-qualifiers on Saturday evening. everybody tunes in at 5 o'clock and cheers them on. Okay, William, other big news out today, of course, now that we're back into the start of the season, an injury update. Who's injured? Who's not?
Yeah, okay, here we go. Leva Fafita has a finger injury, won't be available for Cardiff, should be back in training next week. Colm Riley has sustained an ankle injury, which will be out of action. He'll be out of action for a number of weeks. So we're now a little bit stuck at scrum half because Caelan Blade has an Achilles injury. So Hubert Gilvary seems to be the cover player that's being mentioned. Bundy Aki has a neck injury. And he will probably be back for the fourth match, which is Munster away. Sam Elo has a foot injury and no specified time for him to come back. Sean Masterson has an Achilles injury. Peter Robb has a back injury. Alex Wooten has a calf injury. They're kind of 2 to 4 weeks seems to be the issue for them to come back training. Dennis Buckley knee, we know, is rehabbing, and it's going to be after Christmas. And Gavin Thornbury is rehabbing from his shoulder surgery, which he had in May. So they're long term. So it's not horrendous, but you would like to see, as well as that, we can add in Shane Bolton has a slight knock. So of the 5 newly signed players, Mac Hansen is ready to go. Sam Elo, we've just discussed. Leva Fafita. Greg McGrath is ready to go. Shane Bolton isn't. But again, it's minor. But it's just, it's part of rugby. Cardiff today reported a fully healthy team. But then, and this Connacht are probably quite happy about this, Josh Adams is on Lions rest, as is Josh Navidi. So much and all as I would love to see the two of them, and much and all as you would, they've got Willis Halahola and Ray Lilo in the centre, and that's a dangerous partnership. But at this stage, no side ever has a full complement of players. It's just part of the job of being a coach and being the medics. You're juggling these guys around all the time.
You certainly are. Okay. So just before we preview that Cardiff game, as William was just alluding to it, Colin Grimes, a long-term patron of the podcast, has come up with an interesting point that we raised during the season preview, where we talked about sponsorship and what was going on with Vodacom sponsoring the South African thing. How come they didn't have a title sponsor? He made the point that it's probably to do with the fact that each country-specific conference needs to have a sponsor, which to me sounds like a bit of a new twist on that whole thing. What are your thoughts, Niall?
I don't watch a huge amount of soccer, but I seem to remember in the Champions League that they did something similar, that they had no title sponsor, they had a bank of sponsors. I may or may not be right on that. That was just when you were saying that was coming on, I remember thinking that it had that before. I imagine each country, I had thought that each country or each shield, as they're calling them, shield, would have their own sponsor. My understanding is Vodacom is Vodafone. I'm not sure why they're not called that in South Africa, but that was my understanding of that. Like, that could be wrong, but I had thought that. So maybe Vodafone #Team of Us might like to sponsor the Irish section. I don't know what to say. I mean, there probably isn't enough money in it for one sponsor to take over everything. So I'd share the love and get it in which way I could.
Yeah, sounds good to me. Okay, let's finish off with the preview of Cardiff. These are I know it was Cardiff Rugby back in 2001. The first ever game we played in the Celtic League was against Cardiff in Cardiff, and they were full of Lions and Welsh Stars at the time, and who'd been top quality players, and Connacht came out with a 6-3 win, which I think Da Young said it certainly wouldn't be as low scoring as that at the weekend. William, are you expecting something bigger than a 6-3 scoreline in Cardiff on Friday night?
Yeah, it's they're back calling themselves Cardiff Rugby. Actually, they've relaunched themselves as that. The Blues are no longer with us. It was interesting. I thought today the mood was a more buoyant mood in the Connacht press conference. Don't think Di Young was exactly. He wasn't promising anything. He was brought in to try to fix the situation there, and he kept pointing out that the best they finished in the last 10 seasons is 7th. And he was constantly, he said that 3 or 4 times. He's making the point. He was obviously, most of the media that were there were Welsh. Cardiff are always expected, they're the team that are expected to produce things in Wales. They're the capital city club. They have the ground in the middle of the city. There's a bit of envy about them because they were always looked upon as having money. And I think there's a bit of pressure from that. And he wasn't, he was pretty direct in saying, we have a big job on. Connacht are a good side. They're tight games. They play a very similar game. Fast tempo, passing. I think probably on the ground, Cardiff are a better side, or certainly showed that in the away game last year. Connacht were very impressive, and that might have been Connacht's best home win of the season in some ways at home last year, I thought, because it was a competent display right through the team. But it's a big ask. The two guys, Halahoa and Lilo in midfield, are very dangerous players. They will run. They will go for it. But Connacht are set up to go that way as well, and it'll be interesting to see who gets a spin for them. Mac Hansen 2 tries last week for the Eagles, admittedly against a very understrength Leinster side. He might be somebody to bring a bit of a spark with Wooten out, but the forwards are going to have a lot of work as well. There's no Quinn Roux anymore, but you've Ulton Delan, who I'm assuming is going to start, and I would think either Niall Murray or Roisin Dowling is going to be beside him. They're the engine room, and no Dennis Buckley. He's a kind of you just assume that he's going to be there. He's not going to be there, so the front row is going to be slightly different again. If you're asking me to call it, I think Cardiff will win. That's just on sort of law of averages. I think they're a difficult side to beat at home. The pitch has been freshened up apparently, which it was for the under-20s, but it's still an artificial pitch, and Connacht's record on them is a little bit in and out. So it's a tough one. I hope I'm wrong. I'm going over to watch the game to commentate on it. I hope I'm proven completely wrong and we bring back a Connacht win. But if you're asking me to nominate it, I think it'll be tight, but I think Cardiff at home might just at the first game of the season with Connacht's new system, and they are talking about this in the, Andy Friends talked about it last night on Galway Bay. He talked about it again in the press conference. That is going to take time to bed in. How they're setting up to play, this might be a bit of a stretch too far, but then again, you never know. And as I say, Cardiff weren't, Di Young today was pretty, he wasn't downbeat, but he was not making predictions. He wasn't sitting there being flash about what he thinks. And he made a very good point, and I suppose all coaches, he said, if we win on Friday, it doesn't fix everything, and we lose on Friday, it doesn't mean everything can't be fixed. And that's the thing. But I suppose in an 18-game season, when you have 5 games at the start, you want to start with a win. But I just think it might be beyond Connacht on this occasion.
Right. Niall, like you're looking at Connacht's away record last year was pretty incredible. It was their best away performance ever in any leagues, and the amount of games that they won away from home. Do you think it's something they're going to be able to continue in a tough place like Cardiff? If I remember rightly, the only win they've had there since 2001 was that sort of last-minute drop goal that Tiernan O'Halloran managed to wobble over the bar, and how it made over the bar I'll never know, because it was a dreadfully struck kick, but it managed to get over. The game they should have won quite easily, if I remember rightly, but yeah, it was pretty ugly, but it was effective. Do you think it's something they can do at the weekend?
They can, I suppose. I'm kind of, there's Sure, it depends on what team has been picked. Without even seeing a full game of him playing, you'd imagine that Leave Fafita not being there is a massive blow just because of his size. Because one thing, all right, against London Irish, they didn't do too well because of the lack of, ballast. So Cardiff themselves, it's great that Josh Adams and the other bloke, what's his name? Josh Navidi aren't playing. They're two cracking players. Going through their squad, they've still have an awful lot of talent there. That out half, Jarrad Evans, he started playing really well towards the end of last season. I think he got a couple of Welsh caps off the back of it. Solid central partnership. There's some good players there. I mean, I think if Connacht can get something out of this, it'll be a result. But it's very hard to say at the beginning of a season. You don't know how people have what combinations like or whatever, So I would see, and it'll be interesting to see how 50-22 goes there, because the ball tends to bounce a bit differently on an artificial pitch.
It most certainly does. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm hoping, as William said, that we see someone like Mac Hansen. The other guy's not been available. We might see a new player. He did score 2 tries last weekend. I'm hoping we see the likes of Tom Farrell back. We haven't seen Tom Farrell in God knows how long. And this pitch would be, you'd like to think, is built for someone who can step and offload. I was looking at our offloading stats for last season, and they were pretty low. And I think he had 70% of them, and he only played 3 games. So maybe we'll see a bit more running and adaptability. And
he had all them in one game, Alan.
Yeah, he probably did. But it'd be super exciting to see him coming back and having someone like Mac Hansen out there doing things. And with a bit of luck, Connacht will get something more than a losing bonus point. We might even get a try bonus point, and a winning game try bonus point at the end would be absolutely magical. Not that we ever managed to do that in Cardiff, but you never know.
One thing I think to look out for, just in the way Connacht set up, is, and this is worth watching, whether you're live or watching on TV, they're going to try to do things a lot faster. They've talked about the fact that they were too slow last year with their lineouts. They were just ponderous when they were making decisions. They want to keep this going. It's a bit like American football, where they go with the no huddle scrimmage line, just to keep going. And that's up to your, Jack Carty's, and it's or somebody in the forwards to keep hustling. They want to hustle, and I'll be fascinated to see how that works, because that can unsettle teams, especially if the opposition are going, well, we expect them to do it at this pace. Every side wants to play at their own pace, but if you can get into their heads a little bit, so just keep it. That would be something I'd be saying to people: keep an eye out for that. They did try it a bit against London Irish. It fell off in the second half because that game got so disjointed. But that's just something to work on.
Okay, that's it for the first midweek podcast of the new season. Remember, we're going to be changing up how we make these podcasts available, and these ones will be going behind the paywall. So if you think what we're giving is interesting and good and worthwhile, go to patreon.com/CraggyRugby from the 1st of October. They will be €5. If you want to pay more, we'll take whatever you can get. If you can't afford it, and we'll still always have our match day ones, just tell people about us. Let people know that we exist and that we're there supporting Connacht Rugby as best we can and trying to get the information out there. So thanks, Niall. Thanks, William. We'll talk again after the match.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad and confused. Don't wait until